Well, hello everybody. It's late afternoon here this time, isn't it? And I am again Christopher Schwarzen, and I'm here with my wife Heather Schwarzen.
Hello?
Hello. And we're trying to bring you another part of what we think is an important piece of the puzzle that makes a good father a good homeschooling father. And so if you've listened to parts 1 and 2, then you've heard us talk about some of those things that can keep you out of it, that kind of scare you, make you nervous. We've talked about ways to help your wife pick curriculum, get involved in that process, become an active participant in formulating the work that becomes the homeschool. And so today I think we're going to try to talk to you a little bit about how you yourself actually get involved, not just in picking curriculum and waving goodbye and going off to work, but actually being an active participant in the teaching.
Yeah, we want to be able to offer you some encouragement in that area and also a little bit of direction. We'll be talking about our personal journey to really, honestly, sharing not quite 50-50, but sharing a very large portion of the job of homeschooling. And then we'll be talking about some specific things that have worked well for us, curriculum or just specific subjects that have been a very good match, especially with boys for father-son mentoring situations.
Right, but also trying to look at the skills that God has blessed you with and turning those into opportunities to teach your children, both boys and girls, sons and daughters, but then also looking at where are you being called to learn new skills that become an active part of your homeschooling. And so let me just say, when Heather says 50-50, it wasn't always like that. We started off like most dads do, as we said, getting involved and saying, all right, we can try this, but I'm not sure I'm in it, waiting for it to fail. It doesn't, and you find yourself getting involved in picking curriculum, looking at catalogs and stuff,
Right.
and slowly I've had opportunity to build up to being a more active part of it.
Yeah, there were definitely days in the beginning when you left to go to work, and that's when the kitchen table became the classroom.
Right.
And then by the time that Daddy got home in the evening, everything was picked up and put away. And there really wasn't any evidence that our family was anything different, unique, special from the people down the street whose kids went off on the big yellow school bus in the morning.
No, and I don't, dads, I don't know what time you get home from work, but I know that I got home and possibly, I left in the morning when things were getting rolling, right? Things weren't started, and so I saw a house in transition as I was leaving, right? Kids getting dressed, brushing their teeth and all that.
Right.
And I was out the door. And then I came home at a time that was even worse because it was in flux to have dinner, or maybe in many cases I'd probably missed dinner at that point in my career.
Right.
And this transition of kids getting ready to go to bed, a little wild.
It was hard for you. I can
Yes.
remember a couple times looking out the window and seeing you sitting in the car, kind of steeling yourself for walking in the door. And
Absolutely.
I don't think that that's a unique experience for dads.
No, I don't think so at all.
I think that that's very common. I think that as moms, we do our best and we get better as we mature in our motherhood and also as our children get older and can handle the transition times a little bit more. Of really calming and slowing those times down to give you an easier entry. But I really think that you being more involved in schooling definitely helped you to be able to come in and pick up the thread of what was going on with us.
Well, a couple of things happen in those moments. One, you've been gone all day. You've been involved in whatever the work of your profession is, and it has nothing to do with what happens at home.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like you just, men, we don't leave that at the door, do we? It's very hard for us, especially if you're in a kind of profession where you get work calls at all different hours of the day. And I, at that point in time, was in one of those professions where my phone rang nonstop up until I went to bed, and who knows what time in the middle of the night at times.
And when you've got really young kids, too, it's not like you can come in and your children are authentically asking you, how was your day today?
They're just happy to see you.
They're just happy to see you. And how was your day today? They just want to hear it was great, honey, so that they can launch into whatever they've been doing. And that is a really tough transition again for both of you.
It is.
As the kids get older, as I was saying, you can meet each other a little bit more in the middle there, but that's the early years really are tough.
And you remember, I would come home and let's say I made it for dinner, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And dads, if you're, gosh, I hate to say this because I know some of you are in really tough spots with your jobs, and you feel the pressure of providing for your family financially, and that is part of our responsibility as head of the household. But man, try to have meals with your family. I know I didn't have many dinners, but we eventually made a point of saying we have breakfast together.
We had breakfast. Yeah, that was actually our meal. You didn't have much flexibility on the other end,
No.
but you did have some flexibility in the morning, and we were just able to make it earlier
Right.
than maybe we would have otherwise.
Right. And another point, it was lunch where we lived really close, and I could walk home for lunch, and
Right.
I tried to come home for lunch and do
Right.
that. And I know other men who I worked with had the same opportunity. They would go home for lunch to be with the family. If you're not doing that, please find one meal that you can sit down and have with your family. I cannot tell you the blessing that it will be to you and to them. Please. But I would come home and I would say, how was school today? Right?
Yeah.
Tell me something you did in school today.
Right.
And my children would look at me and they would say, we didn't do
do
school today.
We didn't do school today is the absolute bane of a mother's existence. It is because we know that we did school today. They could be saying a multitude of things there, and that's for another podcast altogether, actually. But one thing for dads to know is we didn't do school today can be code for we read a bunch of books, we did this really cool experiment, then we went outside, we dug up some mushrooms, mom gave us some toothpicks, we picked them apart, that was really cool. We came inside, we had lunch, we had a nap. When we woke up, we read another story. Mom pulled up something on YouTube about mushrooms, and then it was by that point time to get ready for you to come home. So we didn't have any time to do school today.
Well, and maybe then you were making spaghetti, adding mushrooms, and you were counting them as far as the
Right.
early primary math goes, right?
Yes.
That's
we didn't do school today a lot more times than not. That's we didn't do school today.
And it took me a long time to realize that was the case, because I can remember coming home and then being frustrated and saying, what are we doing then?
Right.
If you're not doing school, what are you doing all day, and what are we doing for the children? Homeschooling, if you haven't figured this out already, doesn't always look like traditional schooling. And a lot of times your children, they don't really know that they've been schooled.
Especially if you subscribe to an educational philosophy that doesn't deal with workbooks, textbooks, worksheets, things of that nature. I will be honest, over the years, there were certain seasons when I would purposefully print out a worksheet so that there was something to show for what we had accomplished.
It's true. And I think until I finally had a good grasp of what homeschooling was and how it worked and how we were teaching our children, don't get us wrong, we still do lots of workbooks. We do lots of math in some regards. It looks different with each child as we've done it.
It does.
We're not opposed to those things.
No.
It's just homeschooling offers you so many opportunities outside of the traditional school day.
Right.
And everything, as we've said, if you're trying to turn everything back to God and God's creation, everything is a schooling opportunity, whether you've got a workbook or a coloring sheet in front of you or not, right?
Yeah, and while you can't get around the fact that handwriting has to be done with a writing implement on a sheet of paper for the most part, and that produces a hard copy of something, understanding and grappling with the fact that math sometimes is actually, especially at those younger ages, better served orally than with colorful bears on a worksheet, and can still be every bit as educational, sometimes much more educational,
so because they're more interested,
and you're serving the same purpose and leading them in their purpose at that same time. So So yeah, I get it.
I got better at asking the question. And you would think,
Right.
as a longtime journalist, I would have figured this out a little faster. But asking the right question is always the way to get the
Yes.
right answer.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, hey, how was your school day? I'd come home and I'd say, tell me something you did today. Tell me something fun you did today. Because I can tell you what, the fun thing probably was school related.
Yeah.
And they just didn't think of it in that regard, right?
Right. Yeah, we talk about what's the best thing you did today. That's a very common question that Christopher asks even today around the table. Sometimes we'll say what was hard today.
What was the best part of your day today? Tell me something that
Yeah.
you did, or the best part of your day, or the worst part of your day, or
And sometimes with some kids, especially in some seasons, I mean, I guarantee if you have a 12-year-old boy, you're going to hear, I didn't do any school today. And it's going to kind of be because I didn't buy into any school today. And that's a whole different situation. But dads, if you're hearing, I didn't do
12,
any school
13-year-old
today,
boys, or
if you're hearing, I didn't do any school today, try asking a different question.
ask the different question. Help, maybe if you have to, give that look to your wife and go, help me here, draw this out, so that you want to feel vindicated about the choice you've made. There's no question
yeah.
about it. You want to feel like you made the right choice. And the other thing that I was trying to get to, and I just hadn't had a chance yet, is that, when you're gone all day, you're out of the family situation. You're not part of the scenario. And it's hard to come back and slip back in. Trying to be an active part, working with your wife on the curriculum and stuff, helping her find all that, asking the kids what they've done, is trying to get you re-engaged with the family.
Right.
I know there were times where I just felt out of the loop.
But I will say one thing that I always appreciated about you is that you did not ever and have never been the guy that comes home, parks himself on the couch with his phone or turns on the TV and expects the world to go around him for a little bit while you decompress in that way. Now, there were years when you rode the bus, and I know that you had the ability to sit on the bus for the whole ride, read some sports news, read your Bible, whatever, so that you did walk in already kind of unwound a bit.
Better, because you weren't fighting the rush hour traffic. You weren't the one trying to do the driving while you're sitting, for an hour and a half on an interstate.
Plenty of guys don't have that, and they really do, walk in and they want some breathing space. But I will tell you, as the wife, those kids, whether you're involved in the homeschooling or not, they are bursting to tell you when you walk in the door what they really have accomplished today. And
if they aren't, you need to find out why and get to the point that they are.
Yeah, because they may have learned from you already that you're not interested.
You're not interested, and that's not okay.
No, because you have to fight hard to get that back, and it's a very short window of time.
Right. You do not want to lose that.
Where you can redeem that.
You do not want to lose that in your children. Because as they get older, they more and more will draw away from you if they feel like you are not an interested party in their life.
And that is, I'm sad to say, that is one of the opportunities that public school or private school or whatever does offer you. If you or your wife or both of you, heaven forbid, are dropping them off in the morning and picking them up in the afternoon, and then you're continuing on your merry way, and you're really not invested, they know they will stop expecting you to be invested. At least with homeschooling, there should be one reliable party.
2 reliable parties.
Right.
2.
There really should be 2.
There should be 2.
There should be 2, but they need to feel that investment because they know that that's authentic and they know it matters.
Remember, we talked about, our call is to teach our children nonstop from sunup to sundown, while we're awake, while we're walking, while we're sitting, as we're getting ready to go to bed. There's no spare time not to be doing it.
Right.
And so being checked out, not having a relationship with your family, it just doesn't work at all. It's not what we're called to.
Here's something that somebody told me once, and I think that it really does, it does apply. Your time is already spoken for, and it is budgeted out. The Lord has already budgeted it for you. And any time that you spend checked out, again, on your phone, in front of a screen, playing a video game, whatever your personal thing is, any time that you spend is actually being stolen from another line item. It's coming from somewhere. It is. That time is coming from somewhere because the Lord did not create you with the purpose of playing a video game.
And he gave you a finite amount of time on the planet
Yes.
anyway, right?
Yes.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk then about how do we get involved.
How do you get involved?
And we've mentioned a little bit about how I first got involved.
Yes.
I think the easiest thing to do is, again, what are your skills? What's your skill set?
Yes.
What are you good at? Everybody is created with a different skill set. I'm still trying to figure out what mine is sometimes.
You have skills. If you are a dad who is mechanically inclined, you have something right there that you need to be passing on to your kids.
Yes. I will tell you that, I had one clear skill that came up, and there was a need. I had a daughter who was approaching the age of needing to start learning a foreign language,
Right.
where we felt we wanted to get her ahead of the curve in terms of what would be required for high school graduation requirements. Remember, just because you're homeschooling doesn't mean you get to ignore your state's, graduation
Regulations.
requirements or regulations. Not at all. We're never advising that.
Caesar is still going to want you to give unto him.
Absolutely. And if you have questions about how best to do that, a great resource is the HSLDA Homeschool Legal Defense Association,
Yes.
right? We've been members of for years. And look them up. If you have questions about how to homeschool legally in your state, please do your best to do it. That is a benefit to all homeschoolers
Yes.
nationwide. But clearly we wanted to give our daughter kind of a head start on a foreign language. And at the time, I spoke fluent French. My French isn't bad this day, but at the time it was a little better than it might be now.
Oh, I
and
think
so... Thanks. I said, well, I guess we need to get her on Spanish, and without even thinking, and Heather, you said, well, why wouldn't we teach her French? You know French.
Right. So he stepped into the role of being a French teacher, not really knowing, when you sit in a high school classroom, college classroom, and you are learning a language, they do not teach you the scope and sequence of a language. But don't be intimidated by that. Here's the thing to keep in mind with homeschooling. Whenever you run up against something and you say, but I don't know how to teach that, well, you've already taught them things without knowing precisely that you were teaching them. You
Right.
taught them how to walk. You taught them how to brush their teeth. If you can figure out how to do it yourself, you can figure out how to teach it.
Well, and I find that I used to say another skill that I have, and I'm not great at it, but we wanted to give musical lessons, and I can strum a guitar. I know enough chords to get by, and am I Johnny Cash? No, no, I'm not even Johnny Cash. I'm definitely not the world's best guitarist,
Right.
but having enough skill, getting other resources to help get started, and finding a time to sit down and go, well, let's do this together. I used to tell our daughter, and I've done guitar with a couple of the kids now, I used to tell our daughter, I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach. I'm just here to help you proceed through the lessons that we have for you. I can't really teach you. We're going to do it together. And
Yes.
it really was true, because by the time she picked it up, she's a better French speaker and a better guitarist than I ever could be with
yeah.
either.
Yeah.
It really was more about the encouragement than it was the actual, this is how you do this.
It is, and that, we happen to lean more towards a Charlotte Mason approach to homeschooling, and that is one of the things I think that I saw played out again and again in our homeschool that really led me to embrace that mindset, because we don't, on so many things, you don't quote unquote teach. You're not taking a
helping-
bucket and pouring the knowledge into it. You're helping them to discover.
It's like a puzzle, I think.
Yeah.
And it's helping them unlock the key to solving that puzzle,
Right.
that code. And Yes. Are you there? Are you working through it with them?
Are you exposing them to stuff that you want them to discover? That's huge.
Absolutely. You're directing them. You're going, hey, let's work on this particular set of
Yeah.
chords and this particular song. We'll come back to that later. That's a little bit
Right.
beyond maybe what you can do.
And we bought the DVD and books, Gene Wells guitar books, and that was kind of a beginning point
It was.
that you guys were able to then work through, and it was a long, slow approach of both of you together, and by herself often, because she had a passion for it and she wanted to do it.
Right.
You led her through that process, but then she did reach a point where she had gone past what you could teach her.
Absolutely. And again, then it just becomes encouragement to keep going on and finding
Yeah.
other resources for her to be exposed to.
Right.
Other guitar books. Johnny Cash.
Right. And so much of education is like that. Really and truthfully, I will tell you, there are so few things that I've found that don't lend themselves to that kind of philosophy.
But see, what I think one of the keys, what I didn't realize sooner, but I do now, is that those skills that God gives you, the majority of them are for your family. They're not for the outside work and ministry. Yes, do you use them in those situations?
course you do.
I went to work every day. I still work every day, and use the skills that God gave me to do what He asked me to do.
Right.
I'm blessed to be able to write. It's a skill I've worked on in a number of many years.
Right.
And God allowed me to have a career that involved writing, but really what God wants is me to use that here at home with my children to teach them how to do
Yeah.
that and use that skill.
Yeah, we talk a lot here, and I think it's important to note for dads, anything that God has put into you, you can go out and you can use and you can make an impact for the Lord. However, if you take the time to train your children in those same skills, if He has gifted them thusly, then how many times have you multiplied over the amount of impact that you would have? Christopher, having a heart for missions, he can go out and he can visit exactly one place at a time. He is not capable of going to more than one place at a time to talk to more than one group of people at a time. However, we have 9 children. And it is conceivable that the Lord could use 9 people in 9 different places, plus
me.
Christopher, and all of a sudden the impact that your one family can have is so much greater. So any gifts you have, pass them on to
They
your
are
children.
supposed to be passed on. We say it's about building legacy.
Yeah.
It is about leaving something behind, and again, not just for your children, but your children's children and beyond.
Yeah.
We talk, and again, a point that I did not realize for many years, how important it is that we're not just praying and working for the benefit of our own children, but we're praying and working for the benefit of their children's children and beyond. That it is that we don't spend enough time praying for multiple generations. But if you read the Bible, God is constantly talking about what He is doing for the multiple generations.
Yes.
This is how God thinks, and we need to spend more time thinking along this way as well.
So if you are teaching your son how to change the oil in your car,
Oh,
you
God
could
bless
conceivably
you.
be God bless you,
seriously.
first of all.
Yes.
But you also could conceivably be teaching your grandson how to change the oil, because when you have passed that on, the skill set doesn't change. It just goes on.
Now,
and
let me
echoes.
ask you a question. I want you to sit for a moment. If you got to pause, and I want you to sit and think, what did your dad teach you? And some of you can sit here and think of lots of things. And maybe some of you are like, I didn't have a dad, and he didn't teach me anything. Those stories of my dad teaching me things, those actually mean the most to me. And those are the things that I find myself turning around and then sharing with my children. My dad played a lot of soccer. I was about to call it football, but I know that won't go over well here in America. And, I remember my dad coming home from work, as tired as he was, but always coming out in that backyard and kicking a ball with me. And what was one of those first things I did? Before we were even married, I was already coaching kids.
It's true.
In YMCA leagues.
I think that dads don't really get to complain about the character of their children if they don't choose to invest in the character of their children.
Right.
And if you don't choose to invest in the education of your children, then you really don't get to complain about what they do or don't do. And so your gifts, your involvement, it matters. It matters a ton.
It does. Let me go back a little bit. Even before I was doing French, like what you would say is a coursework, picking up coursework at the house and going, okay, I'm the music teacher, or I'm the French teacher, the foreign language teacher, right? Before I even did that, before I even felt like I was in a position to offer some skill or benefit to the homeschool that we had, one of the first things that I found myself doing was just reading to the kids, finding a selection of good, godly books and taking the time to do read aloud. I cannot tell you how important that has been in our family. I know you started it.
We did. So when our first year, as we've shared previously, we used a curriculum that was very workbook intensive. And then we switched to Sunlight. And honestly, it was somewhere in that first year where you ended up picking up several of the books that were read-alouds.
There were a lot. Sunlight can feel a bit intensive in that regard with all of the different read-alouds that you have to do. And it was not possible for you, and I think, God love you and us, you were probably pregnant. And,
I wasn't, actually.
No? Okay.
No, I wasn't.
I was wondering if that was that.
No,
I don't remember the timing always.
No, I wasn't pregnant. It was such a transition.
Okay.
To reading that much. And honestly, I think some of the books were just so fun and interesting to you.
There were some.
That you would pick them up and go, hey, I'll read this one to them.
I remember reading that. Or maybe again, your mom or your dad read a book to you, For me, I remember I have fond memories of my mom reading the Boxcar Children to me. And so, of course, I wanted to read that.
I think that was actually the first one that you did, because it's one of the first Sunlight read-alouds, or was back in the day in the old core canon.
So having a fond memory of having had that book read out loud to me, it was something I wanted to in turn do with my children. Again, what did your parents impart upon you? Good only here. I know there's always bad as well.
Everybody has the bad.
Absolutely. But it was an opportunity to get involved with, again, not feeling... It didn't feel like school. And that was a good way to get me involved. To say, I'm a part of the homeschool by doing the reading part out loud. And what a great way to put your kids to bed, or even in the morning, or my goodness, it's a rainy day, whatever.
So what I did was I took the schedule that Sunlight had written for each day, and I copied it onto an index card. And he would use that index card as his bookmark as he was reading, and he would do that as a read aloud to them as a bedtime story every night. Because
a couple of chapters would correspond to other lessons and aspects that you were doing in the homeschool day. The science, the math, everything.
And first of all, it was a bit of a stretch for me to remember that a bedtime story could be part of school, because we were still kind of shifting our own, mental paradigm of what is school.
Right.
But it opened up a huge chunk of my day. Were there some times where, I was a little bummed that I didn't get to partake in certain stories that I knew were crazy good? Yeah, I'll be honest, there were.
But
however,
I eased your burden.
It was a huge ease. And I saw the relationship that it was building.
That's what I was just going to say. And it gave me the chance to build relationship with my children in a way that I had not done before.
Yes.
Really helped the connecting so that bedtime, instead of coming home from work and to this, I say madhouse haphazardly. It wasn't like it was a madhouse, but just the mental transition
Yeah.
in my head to go from the office space to the house full of children.
I think it was a conversation more than anything that always got you, because we had 3 kids at the time, and they're just talkers, and they just, it's not that they're running around screaming, they're just chatty and they want to engage.
Again, trying to let go of that work. This allowed me to transition into home.
Yes.
It really was a blessing that it was so good for me to be involved in the read alouds. And like I said, a lot of those books, they were fun. You know what I have happen, and you have this happen. We get them back out. It's time for the next group of kids at the house to read that book, and 1 or 2 of the older kids go, I remember when you read that to me. Do you remember when we
Absolutely.
used to curl up on this couch? Or we've lived a lot of places. So
Right.
just this morning, one of them was talking about that red couch in our bedroom and reading, I don't remember which book it was, but reading a book there.
I think another benefit of you having done the read alouds does come. I briefly mentioned, surly 12-year-old boys. Doing a read aloud with a kid through the teenage years is an amazing connection point, because it strips away the attitude that might be boiling underneath, the lie that Satan plants that nobody cares about you. Buddy, if we didn't care about you, why would I be sitting here reading a story to you and having that time?
2 things in our own life now, especially with the older children, and the fact that we still do a lot of read alouds. One, we still do read alouds as a family.
We do.
Whether that be our Bible time, we still as a family gather for Bible study, and that is a read aloud time in itself. But also after we put the kids together, we're not all, no fun and games. Just last night we were playing games, and a couple nights before that we were watching a movie or 2. But we still find time to select more adult style books to read out loud with the older people. And maybe that's maybe more ministry related at times, you might feel, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, no, and again, this is the mentoring connection. This is so much more than just educating your kids. Dads, when you choose to step into the homeschooling, you are putting yourself in a position of really embracing the call that God has for you of being an active part of their life.
We've recently been reading a book that was written in 1700s, 1800s.
Yeah.
Now I know it sounds, it is it's basically almost a book of Proverbs, chapters on some Proverbs, but it has been the funniest thing to read.
Yeah.
That, my 19, 17-year-old and 15-year-old children have been laughing hysterically as we've been reading this out loud together. And then, do you have to talk about it all the time? No. Does it lend itself to opportunities? I would say even movie choices that you're doing with your kids, especially your older children, finding the time to make discussion into, well, what does our Christian perspective tell us about this aspect of that movie and stuff. The other thing I was going to point about that was, as I'm reading out loud at night to the younger kids, I still see, while the older kids may be doing chores or dishes, still popping their head around the corner and listening in to what is really a little kid story.
Yeah, you will definitely find. I was laughing to myself. I reread Charlotte's Web I guess it's been almost 2 years ago now.
I think so.
With my younger kids, who, when I say my younger kids, they were all, 8 and under at that time. And my son, who would have been 14, 13, stayed in very close proximity. And it happened that the dog needed to be let out at one point when Wilbur was going to the fair. And he kind of looked at me. It was a little bit of and I was like,
I'm not going to
it's
ask.
okay. I'll hold it for a few minutes. And he was like, all right,
He wouldn't have asked.
He wouldn't have asked, no, but he wanted to hear. He wanted to be involved with that. And dads, your kids want you to be involved. They want you to find a way.
They do.
To find your thing. So if it's reading, then that's great. But there's other stuff that you can do if you don't already know.
Well, so not only do you need to figure out what you know and turn that into homeschooling opportunities with your children, you need to be more involved in what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that is a tough one. That is a hard one for me because I am not a man who loves failure. Who does, right?
Right.
We like to feel successful in what we do. And I feel like I have been led to a whole lot of skills type work that I just don't have the background for. I find that more and more, I am teaching my children how to build and make things, wood, saws, and I don't have didn't grow up with a lot of experience in that.
In that, right? But that old saying, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Right.
Yeah, it really is true. And if homeschooling is to be a family affair, which I believe desperately and deeply that it is, then you are going to receive just as much education as your children are. So be prepared.
And here's the great thing about it. You're going to learn new skills. And you're going to get better at it.
Right.
And, while I'm not making, fabulous carpentry type work, I'm not a bad builder these days, am I?
No. So years ago, I decided our oldest son did not have any kind of background had never built anything beyond, the little Pine Derby cars at Awana. And I said, he's going to be
Which
middle
we did
school.
Because I had done with my dad as a kid.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
there
true.
You go.
That's true.
Legacy.
He was in middle school, and I said, he needs to kind of build something. And Christopher said,
I built
okay.
2 things with my dad growing up, and I remember them both fondly. I built a rabbit trap, a live rabbit trap, which we caught a rabbit in. Can't tell you how exciting that winter morning was. And my dad and I built a bench press for weightlifting because I was in high school and I was trying to build strength because I was playing soccer.
So you said find something.
Find something.
And
so you found this little bench.
I went to the Anna White website and I looked up just beginning projects, and I found this bench that was perfect for keeping our, it had a little storage shelf underneath, and it was perfect for keeping our library books on. I thought it would be a great place for the little kids to sit down to put their shoes on and for the library books to go underneath. So I showed it to Christopher.
I mean, we're only talking about 5 pieces of wood, I think. It wasn't much. Where it says, some of these sites will give you a beginner or advanced skill level required. This was, way beginner, no skill needed at all sort of thing.
Do you know what a saw is?
Wood, W-O-O-D.
Right. This is a product of a tree, children. So I showed it to him, and he said, "Sure, we can do it." And we did.
Fumbled our way through it. We did. We fumbled our way through it. I think it was tougher for me than it was for our son, who greatly enjoyed the prospect and said, what can we build next? Can it get harder? And you know what? We do a lot harder stuff. And now at this point, the other example is the garden boxes, right?
Right.
I'm not ashamed to tell the story of the garden boxes. We said we need garden boxes. We want to put some vegetables in the ground. I didn't know what a garden box was, never done it, didn't even know how to build it. And so I found myself, on the internet trying to find plans for garden boxes. Now I pop those things out like they're nothing.
Right.
It's just the way it is, right?
Right.
But that, again, was an opportunity to build something with the boys and then see something as a result, the fruit of it.
So Christopher found the Pioneer Woman. And he copied her garden boxes. Now, the hilarious thing here is that all of this, which started out as an educational endeavor for one of our children, just to check off a box so that I felt confident sending this future man out into the world to maybe be able to change the wiper blades on his car, perhaps, has actually changed our family's culture to the point where we do school 3 months on, 1 month off throughout the year. And the boys my boys are 17 and 15, on their last break, their last 1 month break, they took 2 days of that break and they built themselves a drum, a box drum, and did it completely by themselves. It literally, it only took 2 days because they had to let glue dry.
Well, in the break before that, we built a chicken coop, a chicken house.
They built a chicken house, but they built this drum, and then they still had a little bit of time left over that day, that individual day. And so they built a bedside table for their dad, who was out of the country at the time.
Working.
And so this has changed who we are.
Yeah, we're not about prefab stuff much anymore.
No,
Sometimes,
we really
but now it's
usually
like,
say,
oh,
I could probably build that.
in fact, I appreciate the photos you send me. Go, could you build this? Because now I say, yeah, I think I could.
Yeah.
Whereas 5 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, are you kidding me? There's no way.
Well, our 19-year-old daughter oversaw the 8-year-old basically make nesting boxes for the rabbits.
Sure.
Because, again, it has changed who we are. So when you step into that role, dads, you really are creating an environment where people realize that the education is valued and they embrace it. I think even more so because dad's doing it.
Here's what you get out of it. One, you learn a new skill. Yeah. I have learned new skills. Now, are my older sons probably better at it than I am? I think so. Why? Because they're younger. They pick it up faster. There's not so much of a learning curve. And, but I don't mind them. I'm at a point where I say, go do it. You want to do it? Do it.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about them hurting themselves or anything like that. Two, you're learning a new skill. You're showing your children that you're not afraid to learn new skills.
Right.
That is an important aspect. You never stop learning. You shouldn't. You should never stop learning new things. I don't believe in the old dog can't learn a new trick because I'm an old dog and I'm still learning new things.
Right.
And your children see this and they see, hey, that is an important aspect of my life. That should be part of my life. I should continually be learning new things. And 2 or 3, you're learning them together. Right. And the character development with all of you is amazing. Now, has it always been pretty? No, there have been times where we've been doing something and I am frustrated, but my children get to see that, and then I get to help work through that and go, no, that's not a proper response. This isn't how you behave in these moments and stuff. And as we've progressed and matured, I say we've all gotten better at that.
Yeah. Homeschooling is not, as we keep saying, it's not something that happens outside of your family life. It's something that is your family life. And, when you take on a new project, when you decide, you know what, yeah, I'm going to teach chemistry. I haven't encountered it since 10th grade, Miss Watson's class, but I'm going to go there. Your kids are going to see you authentically struggle with something.
That's okay.
And that's okay.
Because life is sometimes about struggle, isn't it?
Right?
Nothing comes easy all the time.
No, and how much more can we really appreciate and grab onto the value of something that we see someone willing to work for?
Well, I'll tell you who appreciates it. It's the Lord. Yeah. The Lord truly appreciates our... When I say struggle, I don't mean struggle in a hardship way, but working through something. And I believe that He blesses that. And I believe that if you are called to do it, you can count on the fact that you're going to get through it. Think about the creation of the tabernacle with Moses and the people. He gifts the people skills who didn't have skills before to do the work. Had they done that work before? Was it probably a bit of a learning curve to start? Yeah, I think so. But here they are, and they're doing the work that they've been called to do. And deep within us, as I always say, is purpose that we just don't realize we have yet. And when we are willing and we're open to try new things with our children in terms of homeschooling, you're going to be amazed at what happens, not only with your children, but with you and with your family as a whole. I strongly believe this because, Heather, you've seen it and I've seen it. And if you asked me today, would I do it differently? I would say absolutely not. Maybe a few minor things we might do, but I think overall, no. We felt the call to be active homeschooling parents, and that's what the Lord has led us through. We've never been alone in doing it. God has always blessed us when we needed something. He's provided for us in terms of whatever materials we needed and allowed us to teach the things that He wanted us to teach our children.
Right.
Whether that be an actual hands-on skill or some kind of character development, or both.
I would agree. And going back to your analogy of the temple, I think it's something for dads especially to take into consideration that when God gave the plans for that temple...
The tent. Tent meeting, right?
He was so specific, but He didn't neglect beauty.
No.
And I think that sometimes, dads, you're going to have to realize that homeschooling has some elements to it that may just seem kind of frivolous in their beauty. If your wife asks you for some help picking out poetry, a lot of guys kind of go, huh? Why? It really sadly is the rare man who's been exposed, I think, to that kind of thing. But again, this all goes into your family culture and who you are. And God pours all kinds of elements, the practical, the beautiful, sometimes the painful, and he mixes them all in the pot. And homeschooling, it brings out the best and the worst in all of that.
Dads, if Shel Silverstein is the best you can do, that's okay, because Shel Silverstein actually makes the anthology. So it's okay.
My poor
All right.
husband.
Recapping real fast.
Yeah.
Get involved, dads. Just do it. Just find something you can do. It's something you know well.
Yeah.
And say, I can do that. Pick it up. I can tell you that God is going to show you an opportunity. Your wife isn't going to be able to do it, or she's going to feel overwhelmed, and you really do have the skill. It's right there within you. You already know it's an active part of your life. Use it. Share it with your children. Teach your children. And then be open to trying new things. Saying, okay, we feel that we need to teach this skill to our children. None of us know how to do it. I'm going to take it on. I'm going to figure out how to do it. I'm going to learn with them. Just both are amazing opportunities to be involved with your children. Come home, get up in the morning, whatever it is you need to do. Make it on the weekends and make it fun. Mm-hmm. Make it be fun. It doesn't, as we said, when you come home and you go, what did you do for school today? They go, we didn't do school. It doesn't have to feel like school.
I want to add one final thought on that, which is dads, be willing, if at all possible, to utilize some of your off days, weekends, if that's all you got, but to be part of some of the field trips and things that your kids
That's true. Yes.
are interested in taking. Those really are, even if you cannot somehow make other time into your schedule, that is one key way that you really can be a part, and you can be part of the memory that they're going to have.
Right.
Which is huge.
Right.
But you can also share some of your wisdom, some of your stories. Quick bit on that. We were members of a plantation thing in North Carolina for a while, and we went to several reenactment days. And it was amazing that the things that we talked about when we were there were so different often than what we talked about when we were at home, talking about the same time period. And part of that was because Christopher would share things that his grandfather had told him.
Right.
Or, other family things.
That my dad had done. Or...
right. And so that would suddenly become part of the conversation. And so don't discount that. If you can manage to take a random Monday off and go to the zoo with your kids, then do it.
Do it.
You will not regret that.
No, you'll probably enjoy it more than you think you will.
Yeah. Even if you've been to that aquarium 50 billion times, watching your kids look at the octopi is going to be pretty cool.
Well, especially when it tries to come out and grab you.
Yeah.
Okay,
there's
not
that
really.
too.
All right. We're going to end with the Bible verse. And today's Bible verse is also from Proverbs, just like last week. It's Proverbs 4, verses 1 and 2. Hear, O sons, the instruction of a father, and give attention that you may gain understanding. For I give you sound teaching. Do not abandon my instruction. Dads, you play a super important role in the instruction of your children, and this proverb proves it. Take it to heart, make it a part of you and your family's life. So we pray?
Absolutely.
Lord, we thank you so much for allowing us to be here again today, Heather and myself. And we pray that what we're doing is a blessing to those who are trying to follow your call and homeschool their children. I pray that you would bless them, that you would just give them the strength to march forward, and that you would speak to their hearts and lead them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Next week will be our final installment of this
will.
podcast series, and we will have that up next Monday, and we hope that you will join us as we talk about...
Well, we'll be wrapping things up is what we'll be doing. We'll be talking about why you do it. You're doing it for the Lord, and then we'll be talking about, okay, maybe you've done it once and now you're not free. It's time to do it again with another child or another group of children.
Perfect.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.